Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about my 1-year-old must-haves. These are the products that I've needed basically for both Nikosh and for Isla at that 1 year mark. Just to kind of keep it very streamlined and organized, I'm going to break this video up into categories. So I'm going to start with sleeping items, then go into eating, then go into safety, and then learning and playing. So the reason why I broke it up into these kinds of categories is because you start to realize babies are pretty straightforward. Even at 1, their life revolves around eating, sleeping, learning, playing. All right, so at 1, the hope is that your baby is sleeping through the night and you've got kind of your system going. You know, when it comes to sleep, especially at 1, you're over it. You don't want to be getting up in the middle of the night. You don't want to be feeding them in the middle of the night. And you do everything possible to try to make sure that your baby gets the best sleep possible. So the things that I feel like became really important to, address sleep with my babies have been just 6 really simple things. So some of these things might sound like they're very straightforward or obvious, but I think to some people it's not. And for me, especially with the second child, it confirms the things that you're really needing and using with your kids. So the first thing is, if you haven't moved your baby to a crib yet, I really recommend moving your baby to a crib at 1, whether they were co-sleeping with you or in a bassinet. If you're transitioning from a bassinet, I know most people usually do it around the 6-month mark because babies just get too big for the bassinet, but I do know some people who have kept a bassinet or even co-slept much longer than that. So by 1, I recommend that you move your baby over to a crib just so that you can set these healthy sleep habits. And I also feel like it's just going to get harder and harder to move your baby over to a crib if you haven't done it already at this point. All right, so the next item, your baby needs to sleep even when they are infants, and that is a sound machine. The sound machine is important because you want to drown out all noise around you. And this goes for me and my husband too. When we sleep, we like a sound machine as well because you just don't want to hear everything. For you as a parent, if you've got your baby on a sleep schedule, presumably they're going to bed at 7:30 p.m. So you don't want to go to bed that early. You want to take advantage of that time. This is literally the time when my husband and I get to sit on the sofa, veg out, watch some TV together, catch up on some shows, actually have a conversation with each other. You want to make sure that your baby's sleep and the noise that you make outside of their bedroom does not affect them. So a sound machine is really important. We use 2 different sound machines. There is a brand that we use that's an electric sound machine that gets a little bit louder, has a few different options of, noises that we use for both of our kids. And then there is a sound machine that I prefer. It's called the Dome. It's more of a fan type of sound, but very light and gentle, and that's the one that I prefer. And I think they use the Dome in yoga studios and stuff, so it's just a very calm, meditative sound. We used to use that one for Nikosh every once in a while too when he would be in our room, so I think it was good enough for him and the sound was loud enough for him, but we've found that the electric ones can get a little bit louder. You don't want to have it too loud because you don't want it to actually harm their ears or their hearing or anything like that, but you want it to be loud enough that it drowns out all the outside sounds. The next thing, if you haven't figured this one out already too for your baby's room, is to have blackout curtains. This point was really driven home by Natalie, who's a sleep trainer. She's always pointing out that if you have any sliver of light coming into the room, it can disturb your baby's sleep. So if you're trying to get really serious about your baby's sleep, you want to have blackout curtains because you just want to try to get rid of anything that can potentially disturb your baby's sleep. And also, if you're putting your baby to sleep at 7:30 p.m., it could still be light out. I know it's getting darker, it is darker now around that time, but during the summertime when we were putting Isla to sleep, it was really light out when we were putting her down around 7 o'clock. So you want to make sure that you're just getting all light out of the room. That way your baby can just sleep wonderfully and undisturbed, or not disturbed, undisturbed. Next, what we really found was important is a sleep sack. I know a lot of people will give their babies a blanket by the age of 1, and that's actually something that I want to talk about after this. But what you find is that your 1-year-old doesn't actually know how to cover themselves with a blanket, or even if they do, if you place the blanket on them while they're sleeping, they eventually move around so much around the crib and stuff that the blanket doesn't end up on them. So we like to have, the temperature a 72 degrees. It's always almost 72 degrees in our house while we're all sleeping, but that can sometimes feel really cold for your baby, especially if they're only in pajamas. So I have found that a sleep sack is really nice because you can get really thin sleep sacks from Halo, for instance, the Halo sleep sack, Or you can even get, my favorite ones are by Kyte, Kyte. They have sleep sacks that are really soft, but they can be as thick as like a comforter almost. And so you can make your baby feel like they're really warm, and you're not worrying about if they're gonna be able to keep the blanket on them. You're not worrying about things like suffocation, just anything like that. A sleep sack is really helpful. But the other reason why a sleep sack is helpful is because if your baby is a rambunctious baby and wants to get out of the crib, the sleep sack makes it harder for them to actually try to climb out of the crib. And that becomes more and more important as they get older and bigger, because you're gonna eventually move the crib, the mattress, down as low as possible. But at some point you can't go any lower with the crib mattress. So they're gonna eventually try to climb. And at like 2 years old, I think we couldn't keep Nikosh in a crib at all at that point, even with a sleep sack on, but it really did help keep him from climbing out of the crib for as long as possible. And then the last thing that I think is really important for a 1-year-old is to actually introduce a blanket. The blanket situation is one of those where you might want to check with your pediatrician. You definitely need to be comfortable with giving your baby a blanket. So I'm not trying to force this on you, and I don't want to at all say like you absolutely have to have this. But for me personally, I have found with both of my babies, giving them their own little blanket has been a game changer when it comes to their sleep. Both of my babies love to cuddle. They are cuddly kids. They would prefer to sleep in bed with us if we let them. They like to be like cozy, I guess is what I found. So I've been obsessed with the little Giraffe blankets. They're really super, super soft. They come with like a satin trim. They're not cheap, that's for sure, but they're so plush and comfortable and cozy. I ended up buying 2 blankets for Nikosh, and so for Isla, I'll probably buy her a second one as well. We started Isla off on the little loveys because she's so small and everything, and I didn't want to chance it with a blanket with her. But once she turned 1, I decided to buy her a blanket, and it really was a game changer for her sleep because she just wanted something to be cozy with. And I would watch her in the monitor, when she would wake up in the middle of the night and be upset, I would watch her kind of crawl around her crib and look for her little loveys, and she'd want to put her head on it. So I found the same thing with her blanket. And what's funny with the blanket, because she's got the sleep sack, she doesn't actually use the blanket to cover herself. We actually have it down on the crib, and she sleeps on top of it and puts her face on it, and then she'll kind of like caress the little satin part of it. So it really just helps to soothe her, and it's been nice seeing her with the blanket because it really has kind of like changed her sleep pattern. She went from being one of those babies that would wake up 1 or 2 times a night and be upset about it to being a baby where she wakes up but she quickly goes right back to sleep because she'll grab her blanket and start to pet it basically, and then just snuggle up to it. All right, so that was the stuff that I think is, just truly, these are your must-haves for sleep. Moving on to the second most important thing when it comes to, like what parents deem important, and that is eating what your baby eats. So for Isla and for Nikosh, we did this too. We make sure that she eats from our main meals, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We're basically not making her separate meals. We're having her eat our own food. And then she has snacks in between where it's kind of like her own staple foods. But you tend to find that, like if you have their eating streamlined and you've got kind of like a groove going with what they eat, it makes your life easier. And the schedule isn't just there to help your baby, because your baby does need a schedule, but I think it really helps you as a parent figure out your day and navigate your life by knowing your baby's schedule and having things prepared. So that said, you want to have a high chair. And again, just like the crib, I know that sounds so obvious that you already probably purchased a high chair when they were an infant and stuff. But for me, with Nikosh, I had purchased a high chair. It was the Baby Bjorn high chair. I loved that high chair, and it was great for him until he was about a year old. He was a year and 2 months or something, and he started to become too big for that high chair. And that was the only reason why I didn't like it. His knees started to like hit the top of it and stuff, and he started to also be very curious about seeing us sit at the table and everything. So we got him out of his high chair way too early. We let him start sitting in a chair with us, and we started with a bumbo. So he had a booster chair in the regular chairs, but then he would see that when we would sit in a regular chair, we weren't using a bumbo, we weren't using a booster chair. So he didn't want to do that either. And these are, things that when I look back on it, it didn't set me up for success with his eating habits, because that then caused him to not want to sit down while he eats in general. The most important thing is you want to find a high chair that will be able to accommodate your child through their first years of life. So Nikosh, we ended up at 3 realizing we needed to get him a booster chair still because he wasn't comfortable, because he's not like touching the ground. So we got him a booster chair to put onto our regular dining chair so that when he sits in it, we can buckle him and make sure he stays there first off. But 2, his feet can actually like go onto the chair in front of him, and so he's more comfortable that way, because otherwise his feet are dangling, he doesn't want to stay there, and then he gets up and he leaves. So it's been a big game changer, and I wish I would have just kept him in a high chair that would work for him at the table. So this time around with Isla, I had that in mind, so I got a different high chair. I have a love-hate relationship with this high chair, but it's called the Stucca. It looks like Stoke. It looks like it's called Stoke, but I think they pronounce it Stucca. It's the Stucca high chair. It's their original one. I think it's called like the Steps high chair, and it technically can be used up at the table. And we started using it like that with her at first, but then I realized she's just so much better with a tray in front of her because we can put the food on it. So the high chair just in general becomes really, really important. So you want to make sure your baby is sitting in a high chair. You want to make sure that they have a tray, and you want to make sure that they are there so that they're not getting up and not running around all over the place while you're trying to feed them. And speaking of the high chair, because they're in a high chair, you really want to make sure that you get a mat for underneath the high chair because they make such big messes. It's obviously not the most important must-have, but I find that it really does help me a lot to have a mat. This is a mat that I bought for Nikosh. It's called the Gathre Mat. It's this really nice leather mat that is really easy to wipe away. So that's just what you want to find, is something that's really easy to wipe away. Otherwise, all the food ends up on your rug or on your floor. It makes your life harder if you don't have the mat. So it's something that I think is really important to have. Obviously, it's not important for your baby because they don't care, but it's important for you as a parent. And truly, like when we talk about must-haves, like half the time the must-haves are really for you as the parent. Even if you think that you've got a baby who's like the most amazing eater, everyone told me this. When they turn 1, sometime around the 1-year mark, they start to suddenly become picky. And I've experienced that earlier actually with Isla. Nikosh was almost like right on cue with what everybody told me. And what happens is they toss their food. Even if they love the food, they start to play with it and they make huge messes and it ends up all over the floor. So you want to have a mat underneath the high chair. Speaking of the messes that your babies make, you also still want to have bibs. You know, I have friends who just let their babies, they undress them basically and let them sit in a diaper while they eat because they're gonna make such big messes. It's actually not good for their development to keep stopping them and cleaning them and everything. So you have to be okay and comfy with the mess that your baby is gonna make when they are, especially like around the 1-year mark where they're really just going to town and making messes. It's part of their development. You want them to be able to like really get to know their food, make a mess all around them. So just get them a bib and just like be okay with that. You want to make sure that you're just letting them be and not getting overly aggressive with the cleaning. So I was saying that the only thing that you really need in front of your baby when you have the high chair is the tray. You don't actually need to have placemats or plates or bowls or anything like that because they're gonna make such big messes anyway. The thing that we do have though is sippy cups, and I am all about straw sippy cups. I don't like the sippy cups where, you know, they have like the little spout on the end of it and you have to have the baby like tilt their head back. You know, I've heard that that's not great for their like development when they have that kind of a spout and you want them drinking from a straw. And then eventually, you know, we moved Nikosh to one of those cups that is like a trainer regular cup. So we've kind of been training Isla on a regular cup where we assist her, but we only have her use straw sippy cups. The ones that we've been using are by Chicco, but really I've got like a whole video on the different sippy cups that I tried out with Nikosh. These are the ones that just ended up sticking. And that's the weird thing about sippy cups is that I feel like every single baby has a preference for a sippy cup because we have lots of other brands of sippy cups here, partially because Nikosh still uses sippy cups and partially because we wanted to try other brands. And what you find is your baby has a preference for their specific sippy cup. I don't know if it's like the way the straw works or the feel of it in their hands or something, but your baby has preferences, and the ones that Isla is really into are the Chicco ones. And then last, when it comes to eating, you want to have your staple snacks. This is something that becomes really important because you start to almost sometimes feel desperate about what your babies are eating. Like you might give your baby a meal and it's like a dud meal. Like your baby is just like, I'm not interested in this food. I don't like it. that's not what I'm gonna eat. And it's, you know, it's something that has started earlier with Isla. Nikosh at some point got like that too, but Isla's really specific about what she wants to eat. So when you start to notice that your baby is into a specific food or a snack, you just start to kind of hoard that. Like we, for Nikosh, used to like keep lots of olives. We still do. Olives, nuts, things like that for him. Not at one, he wasn't eating nuts at one, but there are these different types of foods that we just know they will eat if we put it in front of them. So that's something that you want to start keeping track of as your baby starts to really like form their own opinion about what they want to eat. What are those snacks that you know if you put it in front of them, they're always going to eat? For Isla, that is little peanut butter snacks, cheese like string cheese. She eats turkey slices. We always know she's going to have fruit. So just always having that on hand, the types of snacks that you know your baby is going to eat, that's always really helpful too. All right, so now I want to talk about safety items, and basically it's baby proofing items for your house. When your baby turns 1, sometimes it's a little bit sooner than 1, sometimes it's after 1. Essentially when your baby starts crawling, that's when you start to realize that you have to baby proof your house or your home. And you know, as they get a little bit older and faster and more mobile, especially once they start walking, then it's very important to have, you know, all of your safety gates and stuff in place. What I've found though is your baby overall will kind of dictate what it is that you need to baby proof. I wouldn't really, you know, like go to town and like just buy all the things that people tell you that you need for baby proofing until your baby actually shows you that it's a problem. When we had Nikosh, I was, you know, trying to stay on top of it and everything. I had this baby proofing expert show up to our house to like do a little walkthrough and tell us what we were gonna need to do. And if I had listened to her, I would have had a home that felt like, I guess, almost like a prison. Like she wanted us to gate everything up. She wanted us to, you know, cover anything that had any kind of like water around it, even like the dog bowl and stuff. And she wanted, I mean, she was gonna change everything. Like we were gonna change the material surrounding our staircase. Like it was gonna turn into such a big deal. I think it's important to be really safe with your babies and be ready to baby proof, but that doesn't mean that you have to just go to town and lock everything up, because you do find there are things that your baby gravitates to, and those are the things you need to be prepared for. Some of the staples though, there are some like almost guaranteed staples that you need, and one of them is to have the locks for your cabinets. There are lots of different types of locks. I tried the different ones where there's like the more discreet magnetic ones, and I've tried ones that just look prettier and stuff, but what I've found is the ones that work the best are the ugly ones that you just like fasten on to the outside of the cabinet, and then you stick them through this little, you know, clasp, and then they are just hard to open for everybody. They're also hard to take off, but suddenly they always break, so you're constantly replacing them. They suck. I don't like them, but you absolutely need to have them on cabinets where there are things that can be very dangerous for your baby. So you don't necessarily have to put it on every single one of your cabinets. That's what we did in our last home. When I think back on it, I'm like, why did we do that? Who cares if he makes a mess? When I'm saying a mess, I mean like we used to take out like our pots and pans, but that was fine. But then there are, you know, the things underneath your cabinet, like the cleaning products and stuff that can actually be dangerous and poisonous. Those need cabinet locks. Like you cannot take a chance with that whatsoever. So that's something you will absolutely need for baby proofing, is a way to lock your cabinets. The other thing that you will end up absolutely needing is a gate for your stairs. So if you live in a house that has stairs, you will need them. And you know, we've been able to push it a little bit longer because Isla wasn't as interested in stairs as quickly as Nikosh was, but now she's suddenly interested in stairs. And you know, the funny thing is that for our bottom floor of our house, we're in a 2-story house, we've basically made everything safe for Isla. We can put her down on the floor and she can go into any of the rooms in our house besides my office, which is almost always closed. We've basically made it all safe for her except for the stairs. And that's one place where we had to put a gate for sure, because she started realizing she could go upstairs for bath time, and you know, some of her toys are upstairs in her bedroom and stuff. We had to realize, like, gotta put the gate up as soon as possible, because you don't want your child to be unattended and going up the stairs or going down the stairs. Speaking of that, so you heard me say that, you know, we've basically made our whole bottom floor a safe place for Isla where she can go anywhere, but we still need to have a safe place to keep her. That's like the place where you can lock your child up. So when they're infants and they're not mobile and they're not crawling around or walking, you can just put them on one of their little loungers or one of the like bouncy chairs, or, you know, in a jumper thing, or in their bassinet. You know, there are so many places that you can put your child when they are not mobile, but once they become mobile, you still have to have one place where you can put them so that you can just do normal human things like go to the bathroom, or, you know, like maybe you just need to go prep something in the kitchen really quick for dinner. You just need 10 minutes. That's all you need. But in that 10 minutes, your baby, when they are a 1-year-old toddler, you know, like mobile toddler, they can get into something so quickly. When your baby is that fast, you have to also have your emergency safe space where you can just close them in. So that can either be a bedroom. You know, we're lucky in this house, we have a room that we call the playroom. It's really our family room where our TV is and stuff, but we can close the door and we know that everything in this room is completely safe. She can play wherever she wants in this room and there's nothing. There's not even a coffee table in there, so she's not gonna bonk her head on the coffee table. It's all completely safe for her to play with. And we can close the door, you can go to the bathroom, and you don't have to worry. But we also have another place where it's like a little gated play area in our living room / like dining room area. That little like play gate area, she doesn't really hang out in there as much anymore. We used it more so when she was, you know, like an infant and she was looking for like, you know, we had a little like corral area basically for her to play in. But now this has become a place where we put her when we just need to put her down for a second and we don't want her to go running off somewhere. So you just need to have like one safe space. It doesn't have to be intense, but you can even use your crib if you really have to. You just need to make sure that you have like your designated safe space for your baby. So those are pretty much what I think are the staple items when it comes to baby safety, your toddler safety. You obviously might need other things like, you know, we have, for instance, padding for our tables and stuff because we have sharp edges. These are all things that I'm telling you, your baby, your toddler is going to dictate, and you're gonna figure out the things that you have to baby proof, and it's not the same for every single baby. They have just the things that they are drawn to. I have a whole video on baby proofing, so I'll leave that in the description box so you can watch it, but I'm telling you, you're gonna figure this out all on your own. And then the last category is like learning / playtime, which playtime is essentially learning time when it comes to a 1-year-old. The thing with Isla is that we haven't bought her too many new toys. She's got, you know, like the second kid situation happening with her where we've got so many toys that we had purchased for Nikosh that she's now playing with, and truly because she's got an older brother, she wants to play with his toys. But you know, we have some of the staples. We have Mega Bloks. He loved Mega Bloks, and they're, you know, nice big chunky blocks. They're like the large version of Legos essentially. They're not anything that she'll put in her mouth and will worry about. They're large, she can build with them, she loves playing with them. One thing that we really learned is that it's important to have age-appropriate toys, especially as your child becomes a toddler and as they get a little bit older, because the thing with toys is that you want them to be able to play with the toy and learn how to use it without getting frustrated. And if they're getting frustrated, then they don't want to play and it turns into emotions, and then when you reach 2, they have tantrums, and then 3, it gets worse. You want to have age-appropriate toys because you want to make sure it's something that they can actually play with on their own. There's also some selfish reasoning for that too, and that reasoning is if they don't know how to play with it on their own, like in the beginning, you have to teach them how to play with something if they've never done it before, but eventually you want them to be self-sufficient and be able to play with it. If it's not age appropriate, what ends up happening is that they make you play with it so that they can see what happens with it, right? So they'll get frustrated with it, they don't want to do it, but they want to see someone play with it. So they'll be like, Mommy, Daddy, play with this, right? So what ends up happening is you end up having a toy that you get stuck having to play with your child, and it turns into this whole cycle, and it just turns into a toy that you hate. And then the last thing, you know, when it comes to learning and playing is to just have so many books. Again, age appropriate. Presumably you're going to be reading the books to your child, but what you find with the age appropriate books too is that they are easier to read to your child. Your baby can only have so much attention at the age of 1, so you want to make sure that you're getting these age appropriate books because they're not going to sit through a whole story that you might read to a 4-year-old, for instance. So even though you might have some of your own favorite, you know, like childhood books that you want to start reading to your baby, I would, you know, like hold off on those because that's just going to, again, be a source of frustration when your baby's like, I don't want to read this, and they start to slap it and stuff. They might be into it maybe the first time, but you find that like you're trying to rush through the story and they're not into it. Instead, you want to get the age appropriate books and read those to them. So for Isla, you know, like she's obsessed with the word books. So we've got like the big version of the word book and the small version of the word book. And it's really like a picture book where it has just one word for each picture. And so we point out the items to her and she loves them. At night, we do read her Goodnight Moon. We find with like books like that, they're just kind of like in the middle. She doesn't let us always get through the entire book. And that's because she's trying to like turn the pages herself at this point. But we are able to like get through the majority of the book with her, but you'll find it's kind of frustrating when they're not interested in just sitting there listening to the book. So you want to make sure that it's something that your baby will be able to like process and wants to actually stay focused on. Another set of books that we really love for Isla is they're these science books. Like there's like quantum physics for babies. And I know that doesn't sound age appropriate at all, but it really is. It's quantum physics, but they really like break everything down for babies. And it's a really cute book series that Arun actually reads to Isla all the time. And she stays focused on it and she's interested in it because it's broken down for her age. And then the last item that I think is a toddler 1-year-old specific must-have, but really just specific for kids, and it has nothing to do with any of the categories that I was talking about, it's just in general when you have kids, is to have a really good stain remover. I have talked about for years that I use Puracy for the most part. As my kids have gotten older, I have moved on to some of the like hardcore stuff, and I keep like Oxyclean and Tide and stuff off to the side whenever I need to like really clean out some major stains and stuff. Oxyclean has actually become a really good one that we go to for like stains on our rug and stuff, but I also use Puracy for a lot of the stains, especially when it comes to their clothes. I've found that one to be just really effective. So really finding like your favorite stain remover becomes super important too. So those are what I think are 1-year-old must-haves. I obviously know that, this can change. Every baby is different. I know that you guys probably have suggestions too. So feel free to make those suggestions in the comments below. Ask questions if you have them. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Susan Yara, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.